Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode 123 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today massive serial entrepreneur, Jason Duncan. Great conversation, everyone. Sit back and enjoy. We are live in the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on Jason Duncan. What is up, brother?
Man, I'm just loving life. Things are good, man. It's good to see you.
Where are you based out of, to let our audience know?
Nashville, Tennessee, Music City.
Have you always been in Nashville?
Yeah, actually, I'm one of the unicorns, man. There's not very many people from here. Everybody's from somewhere else, but I learned how to ride a bike over in East Nashville. My wife grew up in East Nashville. I actually did all my schooling in the county north of Nashville's county. But the Nashville's my home. This is where I live, and I still live in the area.
I always start off my podcast just for the audience to get to know you, what you're currently up to, what you're involved with right now. Then we're just to let the story continue and play around and see where we go with it. So what are you up to now? What do you currently do business-wise, family-wise? Give our audience a little rundown of who Jason is.
Well, I just celebrated my 26th wedding anniversary with my lovely wife. We met on a blind date when we were 15 and 16 years old. Her best friend was dating my best friend, and that we went to obviously separate schools. She was in Nashville. I was in Sumner County, just north of Nashville, and met on a blind date on July 3rd, 1991. And love at first sight. We dated on and off for 4 years, got married at 20 and 19. And she's my best friend, and I can't imagine life without her. We've got 2 kids, a 20-year-old son who'll be 21 here shortly. And I can't believe
how old are you?
I'm 46. Yeah, man.
20,
so
yeah, you started early because I'm 44. My daughter just turned 15. So yeah, 20-year-old, man. You have a young man already, man. That's not even.
I know.
That's an adult.
He's already moved out of the house. He moved out a little over a year ago. Yeah, my daughter's 18. She's in college and she lives here with us, and she's working in childcare, and so. And it's that's the family. And then for business, man, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business coach. I'm a business owner. I own 8 businesses. I started my entrepreneurship back in 1990. I think it was 96. I started a website design company. I mean, you think about that in terms of when the World Wide Web was released. So I was one of the first guys, and I quit. I gave up because it was so hard. Nobody understood what the web was. And so I didn't do it. And I didn't re-enter entrepreneurialism until I was in my 30s. And now, I've got a couple $1 million businesses under my belt, multi-million-dollar businesses, and things have been great. And I've built my business in a way that I don't have to be there every day. I've exited without exiting. So I still own it, still get paid, but now I can go coach other people to do the same thing, which is kind of my thing.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So with you coaching other people to do what you do, you have something called, is it the university? What do we call it?
Yeah. So I've got resultsuniversity.org is my online education platform where I sell and give courses to people that teach them how to start, how to scale, how to enjoy, and how to exit their businesses. And then I've got a coaching company called Results Through Integrity, where I certify coaches, and then I coach I'm also a coach. I coach other businesses how to do those 4 things. And we focus on building a business to exit, because if you don't build it to exit, you're building a building with no exit is a dungeon. And what happens in dungeons, you get tortured. And so many entrepreneurs are just living a tortured life. Yeah, sure, they're making good money, but they have to be there 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and the business is revolving around them. And honestly, that's not what most people want. They want the fruit of the business, the result of the business, not the business itself. And so I think people just don't understand they can exit without exiting. And that's what I figured out how to do. And I want to help other people do the same thing.
We have very much the same mindset, which I appreciate. When did it come to your mindset? When did that click? And I've always had that. I mean, when I was 19, 20, the first company at 17, I bought, and a year and a half later, I sold it. I started and I sold it. So I always had that mindset. So when did that click in your head to essentially fire yourself in the business or exit without exiting? Like, when did that whole concept click in and it started making more sense to you?
Well, it was a very painful realization for me. I started my first big company that I started that turned into a big company. I started in 2010 as an unemployed school teacher. I spent 13 years in pastoral ministry. Then I spent 4 years teaching school and loved it. Thought I would never, ever leave teaching school. But I just knew that teaching was going to be my thing forever. I just didn't know how it was going to be. But when I found myself getting fired from teaching, they just couldn't afford me for the next school year because of budget cuts. I didn't have tenure, so I was left out in the cold. I became an accidental entrepreneur, and I started this business really not knowing anything about business. I knew how to sell, and that's it. I didn't know anything else. And I took on a business partner at the time that I assumed would be something positive for the company, and sure enough, it was. He helped connect me with some people, and early on, he was a financial backer, but as it turns out, over the years that we were together, you tally it all up, I actually put more money in the business, but most people would think that he did, and he thinks he did too. But as we went through those first 2 or 3 years, it was fantastic. There was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of synergy, but over time, it just, this guy was taking the same amount of money out of the business I was, even though I was the founder and the majority owner, but he was putting in less than 10 hours a month into the business. And what I realized way too late was that I had structured that partnership wrong, inadvertently so. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know what in the world I was doing, but I structured it wrong. And then in 2018, so 8 years into this thing, I look up and I go, wait a minute. This was our best year ever. I've made more money this year than I've ever made in my life. I mean, many years over a teacher salary, all in 1 year.
Yeah, of course.
It's like things were good. We moved into a new house and things are going great. And then I had this realization that, wait a minute, this guy who's a friend of mine and I love the guy is making as much money as me and he's doing nothing. And when I say nothing, it pretty near close, as they say here in the South, pretty near close to nothing. But sure, he was coming to meetings every once in a while, but there was no business development, no operational control, no project management, no nothing. So I thought, hey, let me go to him and talk to him about how we were splitting the money out. And I'm not talking about ownership, just money. And he wouldn't hear it. He's like, nope. This is what we're doing, and I'm loving it. He was on the gravy train. I mean, if you look at what he invested originally, he made an 8,900% return on his money, and so we spent the next 6 months hashing that out, and it ended up me having to terminate him from the partnership, and that was the worst thing I've ever had to go through in my entire life. And entrepreneurs who are listening and watching this podcast, if you got to make sure you structure that partnership right. I didn't, and it took a year of hell. I mean, just absolute hell. I mean, a completely torn relationships, legal fees, you name it, all because of greed, and not my greed, just the greed on the other side of the table, wanting something for nothing, an unfair exchange, a criminal exchange, as it were. And so that was 18. So coming out of that into 19. I spent the whole year of 19 fighting all the legal battles, like trying to figure out how to, and that completely took my eye off the ball. I lost an entire year of productivity, and first year we've ever lost money in the company's history. And somewhere, Jeff, in the middle of all that is when I realized this exit without exiting thing, this is what people should be doing, because I spent 8 years working my tail off building a multi-million-dollar company that was recognized in Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, many business awards. And yet it 100% relied on me. And I had a partner effectively taking money from the business, not illegally, but unethically taking money out of the business that shackled me to the business, all because of structure. And so it became, once that was completely cleared, signed off, done 100% out of my life, I thought I should have been building this business where I could have my team run it. And I could go do the things that I feel like God has created me to do, which is teach and coach and lead. And so it took me less than 9 months to make that shift in the middle of 2020, in the middle of COVID. I made a decision. I'm going to shift it to the team. I'm going to get them to run it. I'm going to invest in them as people. We'll put processes and systems in place. And by the end of the year, I had a new CEO hired. And I no longer have any daily duties, yet I still continue to get paid. And that's the way it should have been a long time ago.
There's so many layers I want to dive into there. And that whole little that answer you gave me, there's so many different layers there. Let's start off by partnerships. I mean, partnerships are something that I've struggled. I don't have any partners now. And I've had partners in a few little ventures and they've never worked out. And it's nothing to do with the people. Till this day, most of them I'm still good friends with. It was a situation where I have this drive, this hustle, this go, 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 go. And then most people, just like your partner, just want to sit back and take into gravy train, or their family members get involved, which I found in one of my partnerships too. The family members got involved. Where's your taste with did it leave a sour taste in your mouth with partners, or would that be
Absolutely.
something you? Yeah. See, I'm 100% in the same boat. So like I said, I've had a few ventures with partners, and they've always left a sour taste in my mouth. Where my grandfather was a very successful entrepreneur back in Portugal, and he had a saying in Portuguese, and it's funny that it sounds a lot better in Portuguese, but it says pears are only made for socks. And he'd always say this to me. He goes, Jeff, you're an entrepreneur. And as a kid, he would be kind of my voice of mentoring. And he'd always be like, don't go into partnerships. Don't go into partnerships. Do it on your own. If you could do it on your own, do it on your own. If you need to get an investor, but a silent investor just for their money. Because a lot of people in that way, you account on them to be there, and they don't have that heart, the drive. And I think a lot of that has to do, honestly, is everybody wants to be the CEO. Everybody wants to be a Shark Tank. I think a lot of people watch these Shark Tank and Dragon's Den shows, and they see Mark Cuban or Larry put whatever $500,000 down and then come back and they just got this awesome return, but they're really not putting any effort. So I think a lot of people want to be that Shark Tank. They want to be that guy in that business where they're just investing, sitting back and getting a check, and they don't realize how much effort, how much sweat equity goes into running and building a company. And I think that goes a long way, because once you're in the trenches and you really know, like yourself, how to build a company, it's not easy to build a company like that. Because the reality is, entrepreneurs, I mean, there's always going to be fails and there's always going to be wins. You're just hoping at the end of the day you have more wins than fails.
Yep. Right.
So that's one. So with yourself, would you ever venture back into a partnership, or at this point in your life, you're just let me do my own shit?
Well, I in the 8 businesses that I own now, not counting my wife, who is a fractional owner of all the businesses, just because that's how we run things. She is not involved in any of them, but I have only have one business that I have a partner in now. And, but so here's the thing. When I teach people, I've got a complete startup guide for entrepreneurs. It's a course that I sell that's everything soup to nuts you need to starting a business. And one of the lessons in there, it's 11 lessons. One of the lessons is on partnership. Like how, first of all, you got to understand the law of the architect that says that there's only one architect of any building. There's only one architect of a company, and his or her job is to set the vision, communicate the vision, build the asset.
Yes.
And if you break that law, whether you understand it or know it or not, it's like breaking the law of gravity. If you break the law of gravity, you suffer the consequences, whether you understand it. So I teach the law of the architect to my students, and I say, you have to understand this. Your job as the founder of this is your role. Set the vision, communicate the vision, build the asset. You're not selling. You're not running the technology. I mean, at first, everybody's got to do that. But ultimately, that is not your job. Then if you want to take a partnership, I explain one of the lessons in the course is about how to structure and write an operating agreement that protects you and supports the law of the architect. So in an operating agreement, which is funny to me, like I've got one client right now I'm coaching, they're a 26-year-old company, 5 owners, don't have an operating agreement. And they didn't even know what one was. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how have you survived? I mean, it's just by the grace of God that they've not imploded. And I'm helping them work through that. But in an operating agreement, the operating agreement has to support the law of the architect, and it has to give one person, whoever the architect is, usually the founder of the company, his or her role is 100% in charge. Like Marcus Lemonis on The Prophet, which is one of my favorite shows.
I love that show too.
Anytime he comes in, he says, I'm 100%
in control.
Even if he's not a majority owner. Yeah. And I think that's what people who take on partners need to understand, is that one person has to be 100% in charge. Now, that doesn't mean dictator, because you're a jerk if that's what you want to be. You should be. Don't screw somebody else's life up because you got power issues. But one person should be in charge. And if the operating agreement clearly stipulates everybody's roles, duties, and obligations, and who gets to vote to make things happen, then I am okay with partnerships. And the partnership that I have now, I've got a private equity company, and I've got one other. He's not a silent partner necessarily, but he stays in the background. And that was the way we wrote it in the partnership, is that he's going to help review some deals, but he doesn't want his name on anything. He doesn't want to be on the bank accounts like that. He wants to be in the back end. I'm okay with that. And he's okay with that. But he also knows that at any moment I could vote him out. He understands that. But there are clauses in the operating agreement that protect him, that I can't just have a bad day and kick him out. I have to pay him a certain amount of money for the value of the company. But that's what I recommend. But generally speaking, I don't want partners unless it's absolutely essential to the success of the business.
I love that. So let's dive into, you married at 20. You're 20, your wife was 19.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays the odds of that lasting are very low when you look at statistics. I've been married for going on 18 years. I'm 44. But I was, it's funny because the other day, a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at old pictures, and my wife was friends with my sister. My wife's a couple of years older than me, and she was friends with my sister growing up. And my wife, and I had totally forgot, she was at my 16th birthday party in the background in one photo. I'm like, oh my God, you were there. And it is funny that we started dating, it was around 19. And then we dated, God, almost 7 years before we got married. And then we got married. We've been married now for 18 years. We have 2 kids. How did you manage to keep that relationship strong at that age? Because you're still both growing as humans. I mean, you're developing, you're seeing things. You really, at 19, 20, you haven't lived a life yet. Yeah. How did you guys navigate? Because I think that's so important for other people to hear and understand. Because right now, I don't know how it is in the US, but the divorce rate in Canada is 3 out of 5 marriages don't last 5 years. And look at 2020, I guarantee the divorce rate just skyrocketed. People back into a reality of home working together, not knowing how to communicate, not knowing how to ask questions. How did you guys navigate from 19 on, 20 years old on? How did you guys make it through that? Did you have help? Did you have counseling? Did you have outside influence? Did you have mentors? Like, what got you guys through that?
Well, I first of all, I would give credit to our faith in Jesus. And I think that both of us, outside of the grace that we have through him, would never have been able to make it, because, we were both young and dumb, and I was the dumber one, but she was dumb too. Like, we're dumb and dumber. We don't know what we don't know. Yeah. And to compound matters, we went straight from our honeymoon to move to a new city. We moved from Nashville to Atlanta, and I took a job as a youth minister at a church there. And my wife didn't even grow up in church. Like, she didn't, she had since we had been dating, had come to faith in Jesus, et cetera. But like, she didn't have any background. So she went straight from growing up in no church to being a youth pastor wife. And so that compounded issues even more. And I think my paychecks in 1995, we got married with like $328 a week. Yeah. And we've had a $400 a month rent at an apartment. I mean, we didn't know. I remember that first summer just laying on the couch in the living room of our tiny little apartment. I'm pretty sure I cried. I'm not much of an emotional crier, but I'm pretty sure I cried because I realized we don't have enough money. Like, we can't pay. But somehow, Jeff, we were able to persevere and push through that. And we adapted to all that. But I'll tell you this, the commitment that I made to my wife when we got married, I wrote our vows, and the commitment I made to her and that she made to me is that we, the two of us, each other, we're the number one in life for one another. It's not going to be the future kids. It's not going to be our parents. It's not going to be siblings. It's not best friends. It's the two of us. And we have said now for 26 years, doesn't matter what happens. The world could burn down around us. Our kids could abandon us. Our parents could disown us. Doesn't matter. We're together. And I choose her over everybody. And my kids know that. And it's healthy. I don't do it in a flippant way, but in a healthy way. They know that, man, if it comes down to having to make a choice, which God forbid that would ever happen, I choose her, man. Like, you guys are going to grow up and be adults. You're going to go off and do your thing. But at the end of the day, my wife is the one that I committed my life to, and I will never leave her, never forsake her until death do we part. And we don't even use the word divorce. We don't ever say it. We don't joke about it. I know some couples, well, she divorced me. We don't joke about it because it's not an option. We do not leave us. There's no out. So we're in, man. We're in for the long haul.
I love that. I love that. I love that you're saying that, because you hear a lot of, I've heard the opposite. Where as a dad, a lot of people are like, these are my blood, these are my kids. Like, if I have to make a choice between my wife or my kids, I'm always going to pick my kids. So you're the first person to ever say that to me, which I think is pretty special. With that being said, I think it's pretty amazing, because you guys are setting yourselves up for the future. Because reality is, a lot of people, it's just this cycle they go through where it's love each other, you're romantic, you're trying to do everything to impress that person, and then you get married, and then the effort drops a bit. Then you have a kids, the effort drops more, and they become your purpose. Then you have another kid, the effort drops more, and now you're so focused on them, you're focused on their sports, you're focused on their school, you're focused on them, and the marriage becomes secondhand. And then all of a sudden years pass by, and all of a sudden you're like, the kids are out of the house, and you look at your wife and you're like, you don't even know that person anymore. So I love that you said that, because I think it's so special that you keep that bond strong, because that's something me and my wife do very much as well, is we keep a very strong bond, because in the end of the day, you have to have each other. You need that support. Like, I'm going through a lot of emotional stuff right now. Like we talked prior with some personal stuff, and my shoulder to cry on is my wife. She's always there. And I think having that relationship, and I think that relationship works along with the communication aspect. Being able to ask each other questions, know what each other is feeling, understanding, because people change, and understanding how to adapt to those changes and kind of work together. And I think a lot of people they think everything's okay. And then when they realize things are not okay, they're too scared to change. That's one. And second, they just numb it out, because they don't want to be the one asking the question or the one bringing up the concern. So they just numb it out. And then all of a sudden you got two people that are just numbed out, living together just to live together. So I love what you're saying, because I think that's so cool and special. How old are you when you had your first son, when you had your son?
You were,
I was 25, 26?
25, yeah.
So you're at a decent age at that point. How does it feel as a young dad to have your son out of the house already? Because you're pretty young to have that.
Well, yeah.
Was it hard?
Dude, that was a bad week. It was my birthday week last year, and it was unexpected. And there was no fight, or there was no blow up, and he huffed out of the house. That wasn't what it was, but it certainly was unexpected. It was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna move out. We're like, what? Are you serious right now? Like, how? What? I mean, we didn't know what to say. And
did he have a job already, or school? What is he doing?
He graduated high school a semester early, and then he went to trade school, and he got a diploma in welding, and so he had finished that, and so he was 3 months removed from finishing that diploma, but he did not want to go welding. He's like, now that I've done it, I am not interested. So at the time, I can't even remember where he was working. He's got a newer job now, but he's working in for a landscaping company, maintenance, where he's helping do some maintenance stuff, but because he's good with his hands. But he had a job. It was not enough to sustain somebody living on their own. We knew that, which was what scared us. And we said, man, like, okay, but if you make this choice, like, that's your choice. Like, we're not your backstop. You have a car that we bought for you that you're paying us back for, that continues. We're paying for your phone, that continues. Your insurance, you got to pay for. Like, you used to have obligations, and we're not your backstop, because this is not your address anymore. Yeah. You got to make that. You're making a huge adult decision. Are you okay with that? And he's like, yep, I can do it. I'm like, all right. And man, that was super, super emotional, tough. It was tougher on my wife. No, it was tougher on me through the process.
Well, that's her baby boy.
Yeah, but then after he moved out, it became tough on her, and I kind of accepted it quicker. But man, through the process, I was a wreck. I was absolutely a wreck. But he's fine. He's doing great.
So have you ever tried to bring him into one of your companies?
No, he's always said, he said a long time ago, he said, I don't want to work for you. And that's fine with me. And I even if he wanted to, I would probably make him, because I own an electrical contracting company, and he did work for an electrical company for a while as an apprentice electrician. And I thought, well, you go do that for a couple of years and then I'll hire you. And he's like, yeah, maybe, but he doesn't have any entrepreneurial, juice in him. Like, he's not interested in that. Yeah. He's more of a free spirit artist, wants to travel, play music, and work outside. That's kind of what he wants to do. And we support him in that. That's what he wants to do. That's great. He's a good kid. We love him. And our daughter's on a different track, but she's doing great as well. So
what kind of track is she on? Is she more the entrepreneurial side?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so, but probably on the spectrum of entrepreneurialism versus employee, she's closer. She's further towards entrepreneur than he is. He's certainly going to be an employee or self-employed artist at some point, but not an entrepreneur. Yeah. But she wanted to go off and have the traditional college experience where he did not. But she went to her first semester in college was during the COVID nuttiness, and so. That was not a traditional experience at all. She didn't enjoy it. She moved back home. So we were empty nesters for 3 months. It was fantastic.
That was where I was leading that conversation to. Okay, go.
Yeah. But she came back home, and she's got a great set of friends. She's got a good head on her shoulders. Her faith is strong. She's involved in her church. She leads some of the youth group stuff. And but she doesn't really know what she wants to do. She took some college classes at the local community college. I think now we're going to be looking at maybe a gap year program for her, like to send her somewhere to get some sort of experience. It's weird now because we don't know where, we don't know what's going on in the world right now. I know the U.S. is certainly much more open than Canada is, thank God. Yeah. But we don't know what that's going to mean for her. Yeah. But she's talked about wanting to start a business with a friend, but she hasn't come to me yet. I'm going to let her come to me. I'm not going to go talk to her about it.
Yeah, interesting. I'm very much in the same boat where my son is. I don't think he has much entrepreneurial juices, but he's very driven. So whatever he puts his mind to, I can see him doing well at it. But my daughter has this natural entrepreneurial juice. Like she's a complete hustler. Like this is the kid, like in grade 3, grade 4, she was making bracelets and coming back. And I'm like, where'd you get this money from? So, I'm making bracelets and selling to my friends at school for $2. Like that was she's always been like that. Always a hustler. Like even like last year, I remember her on a couple weekends, I kept seeing her on a laptop. I'm like, what are you doing all weekend on the laptop? Like, let's do something outdoors. She's like, oh, Dad, I didn't want to tell you, but I told Mom, so I don't want to bother you. But I found this thing where if I do a certain amount of surveys, I think it was like 40 surveys a day, I make an extra $15. And so she's always finding ways to hustle and make money and stuff. So you could tell she has a natural, like just that drive, right? So, and I think that's one thing with entrepreneurs. We talk about this all the time, and I'm sure you've had this question a million times. Are you born an entrepreneur? Are you not born an entrepreneur? Okay, I'll tell you my mindset. Then I want to hear yours, because I'm a strong believer that you could give somebody the tools, you could give them all the lessons, you could guide them, but you can't teach somebody hustle. Either they have the hustle and the drive, or they don't. I think that's born with you. Where's your mindset with that? Entrepreneur, born or not?
Well, my pat answer to that would be that I would probably ride right in the middle. But that's not an interesting answer. So I would say that I say that people are probably born with the inclination, and life circumstances will lead you to where you can display that. So for instance, for me, I went into ministry right out of high school, got a degree in biblical studies, and then went into teaching. None of that entrepreneurial whatsoever. But when the time came and I had to flip the switch, dude, I was ready. Like when you look at your childhood, do you see any signs or anything that really that kind of led that way? I'll explain to me. I had a guest on the other day, and he brought something to light, and he called it the family dynamic. And he goes, you might not realize it, but your circumstances growing up may have led you to become an entrepreneur. Or second, your family dynamic is built a certain way, because if there would be such disruption, if everybody in your family was an entrepreneur, if your wife was an entrepreneur, your kids were entrepreneurs, you're an entrepreneur, your house would be a disaster. So you need a certain amount of hunters, a certain amount of cook. Like you need this balance, family balance. And then he said something to me. He goes,
He goes, what maybe led you to be an entrepreneur? Like from a young age, and I started when I was 17. I never really worked for nobody since 17. And he goes, it's because your family dynamic or how you brought up. And I'm saying, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, and I said, my parents were 9 to 5. Like my parents were blue collar workers, factory. My mom worked at a daycare. She was a translator. And he goes, you probably saw this growing up and saw how hard your dad worked. And maybe that instilled in your head from a very young age, I don't want that. And it subconsciously kind of drove you to be an entrepreneur. So he said he really opened up the kind of like the mindset of the family dynamic. And then he looked at me and he goes, look at you and your wife. He goes, let me guess. He goes, your wife's pure opposite. She's very grounded, very like, and I'm like, yeah, my wife's pure opposite, very grounded. My wife says this every day is if today didn't change, it was a good day. It's all about just family values, coming home, enjoying your family time and stuff. But then I'm go. So she grounds me at home. And then my kids are the opposite. One's relaxed, one's a hustler. So you look at the family dynamic, and when you actually study your family, it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably a lot to that. I know that growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom all my growing up years. My parents have been married almost 50 years. Never, we don't have any divorce in our family that I can think of. Yeah. Everybody's stayed married for a long time, and my dad worked for the same company for like 30 years, and he was also in the Navy, and so. There are no business owners or entrepreneurs in my immediate family. My grandfather on both sides were employees of their respective companies. So I don't know, maybe there's something to that subconsciously, but it took me a long time. I was in my late 30s before I started mid 30s before I started my own company. So I don't know.
With your, I mean, obviously you said there's been ups and downs with partnerships, stuff like that. Give me one moment that you could think of as an entrepreneur that you're just like, and I think we all go through this as entrepreneur, Jason, is you're like, what am I effing doing, man? This is so much stress, so much anxiety, so much strain on myself. Have you had one of those moments? Like you said, was it the last year and a half? Was it before that? When did you have that moment where it's like, wow, like you had to really just reassess and understand why you do what you're doing?
Well, the way I tell people is that, for the life of the entrepreneur, there's an invisible horizontal line that only the entrepreneur can see. And below that line is bankruptcy, lots of bad stuff. That line is out of business. Under that line, bad stuff happens. Yeah. And the entrepreneur is the only one who can see how close the business is to that line at any one time. And so every day you wake up and you're either really close to it or you're really high. And because if you ever go below it, you're out of business. And so there have been so many times that I've been so close to that line that I didn't know how I was going to be able to make it. I know that financial, other than the end of the relationship with my partner, we had a fantastic relationship. Like we were good friends. We rode motorcycles together. That's how we met. I mean, we had the same worldviews. His wife and my wife, the four of us would go to dinner occasionally. We had a good relationship. So I never had relationship issues. I didn't have any employee issues. I had one customer that almost put me out of business, and it was a financial issue. I had a customer who was at the time was one of the largest healthcare providers in the world, and we were lucky enough to get a contract with them to do a lot of their hospitals, because my company was in the LED lighting space, and we do LED lighting retrofits all over North America. And so we had a contract to do a bunch of their hospitals, but they were so unethical in the way they ran things, which was ironic because they're supposed to be a faith-based organization, which certainly doesn't protect you from people doing stupid stuff. But they held out on us. They were over 160 days late on a $1 million invoice. Here I am. I'm a small company. I can afford to float that for a little while, but I can't float that for 6 months. And so they did it. And then I had to write a letter to the CEO, and finally the CEO saw what was happening and forced the CFO to cut the checks, and we got paid up. But that experience, they did that twice, by the way. They did it over 2 years. That almost put us out of business. But when we came back out of it and negotiated our way through it, we were much, much stronger company because we had figured out how to negotiate it. The thing that we came out of it with, though, was debt. We had never been in debt before, but we had to take debt just to float that $1 million two times. That was the worst time, and it was because it was financial. I mean, we had 15 or 20 employees. We never missed a payroll ever until COVID. And I think everybody missed payrolls in COVID, but like we never missed a payroll. And, that's when I had to go out and find a way. Like there was a moment we needed $250,000 to make ends meet, and we didn't have it. Bank wouldn't give it to us. Nobody would give us any money. My partner wouldn't put any money in, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I got to go do it. And I figured out how to get it done. And I, remember writing that check and putting that money in the business. And I told my partner and I told my finance director, I said, this money will be returned to me in 60 days. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, or hell is all going to break loose. I'm coming. Hell's coming with me. And it worked. It worked. But dude, that was the closest we ever got to the line.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I think we talked about this before our last conversation. In Canada alone, they're saying now it's over 12,000 mom and pop restaurants have all locked their doors. Over 500 gyms right across North America. I mean, we're right across Canada have locked their doors. It's people not being able to pivot or have that hustle to get that ends meet to make it, right. And sometimes, sometimes you have to actually justify and look at the business, and is it really worth taking on the debt or just shutting down and restarting again? So there's different ways of looking about certain stuff as well, right? Because a lot of people, they have so much passion for that business, and they just keep going and going and going, and they're just getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Sometimes you have to know when to say quit.
Yeah,
that's a very powerful thing as well, right?
Yeah, well, that's a thing called escalation of commitment, and so we commit to something as an individual who has high integrity. We commit to it, and then it doesn't work. And so we escalate our commitment, thinking that our escalation of the commitment will actually make it work, when in fact, it probably works at the opposite.
100%.
But there were times when we had, my partner and I at the time, had conversations about, is this it? Is this it? And you know what kept us from saying, no, this is not it? Debt. Had we not had, this is the weird irony of debt, because we never had debt until that customer screwed us. But because we had debt, we committed, said, look, we can't close it down because I'm not writing that check. You writing that check? And he's like, no, I'm not. So we stayed in, but there were times that had debt not been there and we were having such issues, we probably would have said, you know what? We're done. This is a good day. I'm going to go do something in an industry I actually care about, because I never cared about lighting. I mean, I was successful at it. Yeah. I didn't know anything about it, learned a lot about it, and sold a lot of it. But, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would never start a lighting company. And I ask entrepreneurs that all the time. Like, if you could go back and do it all over, would you be in the same industry? It's about 50-50. Some say yes, some say no. But I can tell you, hell no. Like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do lighting again. Not because I hate it, but because now that knowing what I know now, let me go back 10 years, 15 years, of course, and get into something I really care about. And dude, I would be a billionaire right now. Like, I would have killed it. But I suffered through in an industry I didn't know because I was an accidental entrepreneur, but I still made it work, because our ability to adapt will always outperform our ability to plan.
100%.
So we can plan all we want, but your ability to adapt to crap when it hits the fan, that's going to outperform that ability to plan every time.
I love that. So fast forward now that you've had all these lessons, all this stuff, 8 companies is a lot to juggle. Like when I'm on your podcast, we'll talk. I'm pretty much everywhere as well. But 8 companies, as a busy entrepreneur, how do you manage your schedule? And that's something I put a lot of effort into my schedule, my blocking, putting my non-negotiables. How do you balance your schedule?
Well, from just a tactical standpoint, I use a Moleskin, and I'm old school. I write it down. Now it's all in Google too, like on Google Calendar, but I write everything down. So it says today, got Jeff, I got you on here, at the time that we're supposed to meet. So I write everything down. I'm a list maker too. I do check boxes to do lists. I also believe in the big rocks, medium rocks, small rocks theory. I know that, for those of you that have not heard of that, if you've got a big jar and you've got big rocks, medium rocks, and little rocks, and they will all fit, definitely 100%. It's not a trick. How do you fill the jar and make sure there's nothing left? Well, you have to start with the big rocks, because if you put in the little rocks first, they're going to fill up spaces and there's not going to be any room for the big rocks. And so we actually, in my companies, we use the big rock, medium rock, small rocks, not every single week, But a lot of times we'll say, okay, we got a lot of crap going on. Let's list out what's the big stuff, medium stuff, little stuff. Let's get the big stuff done first. Let's get that done first. And then at the end of the week, we typically have them all checked off anyway. But I do that. And then the other thing that I believe in, and I teach a lot, is something called the law of open cycles. And an open cycle is any task or communication that's not yet completed. So anything that's open that you have to complete. It could be an email, a text message, a letter you got to write, a bill that needs to be paid, a customer who needs a call back. It could be any task, big or small. Those are all open cycles. And the cause of stress for the human condition is not the endurance of stressful situations. It's too many open cycles at any one given time. Because any of us can handle, no matter how monumental the task is, as long as that's the only thing we have to do. If that's it, that's all we got to deal with, everybody can handle anything. But the thing is that every task is like the pages in this book. They all add up. They all add up and they stack and they stack and stack. So I teach people, and I do this frequently myself, to do an open cycles inventory, where you sit down and you write everything that's open right now. And it could be minute, it could be monumental, whatever it is, you write them all down. And then you divide that into 3 categories: things that you can close right now without any hesitation, things that are going to take a little planning to close within the next 10 to 30 days, and then things that are going to require someone else's assistance that you don't have the control to close. And what you do is you go through and close that first list immediately, and your stress level drops. You feel fantastic. You feel so good. And that gives you margin to handle all the other stuff. So I've got 8 companies. I don't recommend that for anybody, but I think that the only way I'm able to manage that is by going through and doing those open cycle inventories and taking care of the big rocks first. I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, I'd been on vacation for a week. My wife and I went to Jamaica for our anniversary. And so yesterday I came back clear-headed, as I always do when I come back from vacation, but I also am anxious. Like, there's a lot of crap we got to do. And so I sat down with my team in my office and I said, okay, let's go through each company. What's going on? Why do I feel overwhelmed right now? And so we went through and did a really quick open cycles inventory. Like, what's going on in this one? Oh, I don't actually have anything to do in that one. I'm carrying an open cycle that doesn't exist. Oh, that's gone. Then I went to the next one, did the same thing. And when I got down to the end, I was like, I'm good. Like, we're fine. I don't know why I'm feeling frustrated. So, but it took doing that inventory to kind of really get my mind focused and have a good mindset on the right thing.
I love that. I mean, I do very similar stuff. I would say I don't call it that, but it's understanding what is your priorities, what is important. And I love your do list, because I do a do list every morning still. I've been doing that for 26 years now. Every single morning I do a do list. So I have my morning, very, very small, short morning routine. I'm an early bird, not because I love to, because I feel like I have to sacrifice myself. So I wake up at 4:30 every morning and I try to get as much done as I can by 9 o'clock. And that allows me to have my 3 to 7. So I try to be home every day from 3 to 7 with my family. So it's being able to wake up early, get as much things as you can done. But what I do is throughout the evening, the night before, if anything comes to my head, or if anything pops up, the things to do list, or things that I didn't complete that day, I email myself this list. And when I wake up in the morning, when I'm going through my inventory and I'm going through my stuff, I'll go through all my emails, and that's how I start my do list. And I handwrite my do list every morning. And it's that accomplishment, that sense of satisfaction, marking off and checking off. And at the same time too, it was when I do have a crazy busy day ahead of a do list, I will literally do what you just said. I will figure out what things I could do really quickly and just boom, 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 hammer them off, relieve the stress, and then start focusing on the other stuff. So I love how you do that. It's just something in a different way. I do that very similar. Couple quick questions. I don't never have set questions with my guests, but I only have 2 questions at the end. Superpower. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Everybody wants to fly. That would be kind of cool, but I don't know. That would be really impractical. Superpower, probably strength, super strength.
Hulk strength. Cool. Hulk strength.
Yeah, like I can open every jar in the house. I don't work out because I can open every jar in the house, but it would be cool to have a little bit more super strength.
We're talking about super strength. Where do you put your health as a priority in your life?
I hate to exercise. Absolutely hate it. I tried. I've never been a guy. Don't run. I can't do it. Like it's all I can do to plank 1 minute a day. Like I'm not that guy. So for me, I've got to make sure that I just try to stay active, and whatever that means. Like I try to get up and move around. What my wife and I, we have a small farm here, and we try to walk around the farm a couple of times, 2 or 3 times a week if we can, if we've got the time to do it, just to stay active. I try to eat fairly healthy. We've lost, we were prepping for our trip to Jamaica. We both lost a lot of weight to get ready for that, but that actually feels good. I adapted to being a little bit overweight, and now I'm kind of coming back and I'm feeling much better. I'm looking at old pictures of myself going, man, I've lost a lot of weight. Like I look a whole lot better, feel a lot better. So, but I'm not an exercise guy. I can't do it. People to go work out, I'm like, I don't understand. Like I go to the gym every day, but my refrigerator is named Jim.
I think sometimes just finding something that you enjoy, right? Movement is key. Yeah. I always tell people it's not in the working out, it's the movement is key. As a family, because my kids are homeschooled now because of what's going on with the world, because the schools are all closed here, we try to every night about an hour and a half as a family do an outdoor activity, whether it's power walking, whether it's biking, whether it's stuff. So we do an activity together as a family. But I'm going to give you something on my side where I put health at the top of my priority list. Even though everything I do and I teach and I educate is about being father and fatherhood, but I still put health above family, above business, because I have that mindset is if you are not mentally, physically, and spiritually at a top peak at all times, you're not able to fully serve everybody at the max. So I try to do is put my health at a certain level, the way I eat, the way I take my vitamins, the way I work out, that like going through stress now that I'm going through stress with my pops and everything and trying to be the supporting cast to my other family and everything I'm doing, I'm essentially helping 2 families now. If I wasn't physically at a certain level, because mentally you're drained, if you're not physically at a certain level, you're not going to be able to perform, right? So I always put my health at a certain level. And I think it's important for people to understand that and do them for themselves, because I mean, we're not invincible. Shit happens, right? So being able to take care of yourself and take care of others, I think is so important. And the only way you're going to do that is prioritize yourself and put yourself in that level. And a lot of people are like, I don't like working out. It doesn't have to be workout. Find something. You like biking, go for a bike ride. You like doing something that's movement on a regular basis is all you need. And then just eat right, eat healthy, man, make healthy choices. So there's certain ways you could do it to adapt stuff. If something that were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered or described by your loved ones?
So my vision, my personal vision statement is to be known as a man who made Jesus and his wife happy. That's it. Like at the end of the day,
happy wife, happy life.
That's right, man. If my wife is happy and my Savior Jesus is happy with me, I feel like what else is there? Like I'm good. I don't know if my employees like me, that's fantastic. If my kids like me, that's great. Mom and dad love me, that's fine. But at the end of the day, those are my 2 people. Those are the people that I want to be happy with me.
I love it. Anything else you want to leave your audience with? And we'll get to your contact information after, but just in general, any information or anything you want to leave them with.
Well, I would say this, that like I just gave you my vision, what I want to be. A vision is what you be, not what you do. So there's a little different. Yeah. But what I do, like my personal mission is to help people get the results they want out of their life. And I truly believe that entrepreneurs are the ones that change the world. I think if you go back and look at anything that you've done of any significance in your life, there's some relation to that experience back to some entrepreneur, and you probably never thought about it. The fact that some guy somewhere, lady, I don't know who it was, some person somewhere invented a webcam and invented the Blue Yeti microphone or the microphone that you're using. The fact that we have the internet, all of these are entrepreneurial things, and they're engaging us. They're making our lives better. And I believe that entrepreneurs can change the world for the better. And because of that, that's why I'm committed to teaching entrepreneurs how to start, how to scale, how to enjoy, and how to exit businesses. And so that's what I want to do. And part of what I want to do is I want to see 1,000 businesses started every year through people that I'm coaching and impacting through my podcast and through my coaching and through my university. That's what I want to see happen. And I absolutely love it. And I actually give away a free hour of coaching by Zoom to one entrepreneur every week. Somewhere around the world, somebody gets it, and I get on a Zoom just like this. And it's the real Jason Duncan with the real entrepreneur dealing with a real issue. And I get one issue, 1 hour. What do you got? And I'll do it. And I coach them through live, and there's no cost. So if anybody in your audience is interested in that, then go to therealjasonduncan.com/free coaching, and you just apply. My team picks one person a week, and I do one person a week, man. And I love it. Of course, I got paid clients too, and I do masterminds and I do group coaching, but I do the free coaching as part of my give back, because I really think that entrepreneurs are the ones that change the world.
It's so crazy that in the last, I've been coaching for almost 4 years, 4 years, but the first 3.5 years, I never charged a penny. I took 64 entrepreneurs under my wing, and I never charged a penny. It was more me building proof of concept, helping, giving back. And it's, and I always tell people this, and you, I'm sure you're a strong believer in this. Once you get into the actual coaching realm and helping and serving, giving back, probably 99% of the work we are going to do is going to be for free. And we have to understand that, right? But I love that you have built these sustainable businesses, and you've built these proof of concepts. You're not, I think we're in a world right now that everybody's a coach. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the resume, what the F and hell have they built?
I love it.
But it's true, right?
It is true.
If you go to Instagram, it's a coach chasing a coach, chasing a coach, chasing a coach. Just chase everybody's tail, or everybody's coaching a coach. And then when I look at these guys and I'm like, okay, like, here, look at my resume. I've built these sustainable companies. I've built and exited these. What the hell have you built?
Yeah.
And understanding that. And I think it's important for people to realize that whether they do need the help, they do need the advice, they do need the guidance, to pick somebody that has lived there, has done that in that space, has built something that has the gray hairs, to prove that they've been through the stress and the ups and downs of a business. And you could take all those years of mistakes and not make them yourself. So I love that you've built yourself, you've done what you've done. And now that you're able to serve and give back in a way that with your experience, and that's what I'm doing, right? So it's people like me and you are going to be able to serve and help as many, not those 22-year-olds that are professional coaches on Instagram that have built, they show off their abs and they show their abs and they have a huge following because they got a six pack, but they've never coached or built nothing on their own. So good for you, buddy. I appreciate that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, Jeff, because and one of my clients who owns a gym here locally, he and I were in our session a couple of weeks ago, and I coach him one-on-one, it's just the two of us. And we do spend about an hour and a half together every other week. And he was fired up this day, man. He's something, I don't know what was going on, but he was in a good way, not angry. He was just really fired up I didn't prompt him with this, but he said to me, very similar to what you just said, is like, man, I'm so sick of seeing these Instagram gurus that never done a damn thing in their life. He said, man, they haven't built anything. They don't know anything. He said, they need people. And then of course, this is going to self-serving. He said, they need people like you who built it. Like, we actually meet in my company's office, where the company that I've exited, we meet in their training room when I do my coaching session. He's like, you built something and you exited and you had a partner that you had to deal with. And and so I said, hey, his name is Jason as well. I said, Jason, could you call this lady on the marketing team and get on video and say all that?
It's true. It's so true. So true. Right.
And I love it too, man. When you see these guys on Instagram and they're speaking, but you don't see anybody in the audience, and you're like, I'm pretty sure they're in a room by themselves and they're just talking, acting like they're talking. I'm like, man, what have you done? Like, did you build anything? Have you even done it? Do you even know what you're doing? Have you had to terminate a partner? Did you have to get funding? Did you almost go bankrupt? Did you have to go borrow money from Guido and he's going to knock your knees out, but if you didn't pay it back? Like, what did you do? Have you fired anybody? These coaches who've not done anything, I don't know how they make money, but it does give me hope, because I've done it and I can probably make money at it.
I love it. How can our audience get a hold of you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at The Real Jason Duncan. That's at The Real Jason Duncan. I'm also on YouTube. If you just YouTube search The Real Jason Duncan, I post 3 or 4 videos a week on content related to wisdom for business leaders, Friday sales tips. I do other content just specifically for entrepreneurs, but therealjasonduncan.com will lead you to that entire universe.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Appreciate you, brother. Looking forward to continue this relationship, man. I think we have a lot in common. I think we could probably help each other in the future and grow together. So I appreciate you, brother.
Well, I am honored that you invited me on the show, Jeff. I'm honored to meet you. And I'm also this has been a great experience. So thank you. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, brother. Have a good day.
You too.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Jason, for being such an incredible guest and taking time out of his incredibly busy schedule to be a guest on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. Great conversation. If you guys enjoyed it as much as I have, like all weeks, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. We're trying to build something special here. Leave a review. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. My team and I love spending time reading the reviews and checking them all out. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.